its anti-American socialist dictator, Nicolas Maduro, are also exporting violent terrorist gangs like Tren de Aragua into American cities. And it goes much deeper than that. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
The Venezuelan regime is a source of instability in the entire region. Over 8 million Venezuelans have flooded into neighboring countries as a result of the regime's activities within their own country, including into the United States. They also happen to be the foothold of Iran. That's not spoken about enough. Iran, its IRGC, and even Hezbollah has a presence in South America, and one of their anchor presence, especially for the Iranians, is inside of Venezuela.
Venezuela has had a long, cozy relationship with the Iranian regime dating back to the days of Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez. China and Russia also have close relationships with Maduro, who is widely seen as the illegitimate president of Venezuela after his 2024 election victory that was marked by widespread fraud and voter intimidation by Maduro goons. All of this has led to the current standoff between the United States and Maduro. Here's more from Secretary Rubio.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. If you can work out a way where you can bring stability to the hemisphere, you can make Venezuela be a country that isn't the base for Iranian influence against and activities against the United States. You could have a Venezuela that didn't traffic in drugs and didn't send people to our country like Tren de Aragua gang members and the like. That would be great. The problem is Maduro has made 5 deals with different parties over the last 10 years and has broken every single one of them.
Folks, President Trump has had enough of the Venezuelan cartels supported by Maduro that are sending deadly drugs like fentanyl into the United States. Nearly 200,000 Americans have died through drug overdoses in the past 2 years alone, and working class communities have been hardest hit. So, over the past several weeks, the president has ordered the U.S. military to destroy drug trafficking boats near Venezuela, boats that are carrying deadly drugs that will wind up in the United States. And Maduro is facilitating it. Here's more from President Trump.
There's a very receptive ear to doing exactly what they're doing, taking out those boats. And very soon we're going to start doing it on land too, because we know every route, we know every house, we know where they manufacture this crap, we know where they put it all together.
Now, the U.S. has also positioned an aircraft carrier near Venezuela as a show of force to deter the drug gangs from shipping any more poison to our country. Trump's moves have sent the left and their allies in the mainstream media predictably into a frenzy. Democrats are accusing the Trump administration of war crimes, and they're calling for Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to be fired. These are some of the same people, of course, that want to send billions of your taxpayer dollars plus advanced weapons to Ukraine indefinitely. But when President Trump confronts an imminent threat in our own backyard that's killing Americans every day, they suddenly oppose any and all military force. This is the kind of mindset that has allowed all sorts of bad actors like Tren de Aragua to set up shop inside the United States. Just ask the Muslim Brotherhood. Their minions have been embedding themselves in our society for years to the warm embrace of the left. But now President Trump is taking action. Coming up, Erin Molan joins us to break down Trump's recent designation of the Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization and what it means for you. That's next. Stick around. From Cairo to Qatar to New York City, the Muslim Brotherhood's influence runs much deeper than most Americans realize. And now the United States has finally taken a decisive move against the Brotherhood's global network. Erin Molan is an award-winning Australian TV and radio presenter and host of the Erin Molan Show, where she reaches millions and is one of the boldest voices explaining how Islamists and the radical left are working hand in glove across the West. Joining us from Sydney, Australia, Erin, it is great to see you. And hey, major move. President Trump last week announcing that he's designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. Erin, is this a symbolic gesture, or is this kind of the first volley in a larger plan to dismantle the Brotherhood's global network? Does it have teeth?
It's a great way of framing it, Eric, and a great question to start with. And thank you so much for having me on your show. You do wonderful work, so it's a real honor to be here. Look, I think initially there was a fair bit of skepticism regarding this announcement. And when you look through these executive orders, you don't see Qatar, you don't see Turkey, you don't see Syria. And those are the places where the Muslim Brotherhood is at its most dangerous, where they do the most dangerous work. So initially people were thinking, oh, wait a minute, this feels a little bit toothless tiger. But when you actually look into it and you speak to people who know this space back to front, and I have no life, Eric. Most of my days are spent talking to people who know these spaces back to front. They go through the reasons why. A woman called Mariam, who works with the FDD, explains it really, really well, in that if you were to go for those chapters early and first, these countries are smart. These places are very smart in how they cover up what these Muslim Brotherhood organizations are doing. You are going to fail. What you need to do is you need to get the low-hanging fruit first. Once you can get them, once you can ascertain and put them into the right containers and classify them as terrorist organizations, you then follow the chains and follow the money. Then you can go for the big dogs, essentially. And look, I'm not silly. Your audience is not silly. We know that President Trump has close relationships with the leaders in Qatar, with the leader of Turkey. He says he's a good bloke, remember, despite the fact that these nations fund a lot of the terrorism we see around the world. We know that these elements of dialogue are needed for the kind of peace that we are seeing around the world. It doesn't sit comfortably with me, but I'm confident that this is actually not a toothless tiger. This is a very good, strong first move, and one that will eventually in there being a ban that covers all of these places. I had the Israeli Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar, on my show a couple of days ago as well, and asked him about this on and off camera. And as you all know, as someone who does this for a living, they can often be very different answers, the two answers that you get. I got the exact same answer. They are happy with this move, Israel, obviously as a nation that bears the brunt of a lot of the hate of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I think this is as much as we can ask for now, and it's about time the rest of the West followed suit. You look at a country like Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood began, and they're not sympathetic, by the way, to the plight of the victims of the Muslim Brotherhood, but they banned it before anyone else. They know how evil this is, whereas you look at the UK and they say, come on in. Suicidal empathy. Here we go. It's insanity.
Yeah, Aaron, great breakdown all around. And Hamas, by the way, Israel knows this all too well. Hamas is the self-identified Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah. By the way, we talked about the Brotherhood, the birthplace, obviously, Egypt and the Middle East. But Aaron, break down for us a little bit more how the Brotherhood operates here in the West. I think of mosques. I think of kind of self-segregating communities in places like London. Talk a bit more about how the Brotherhood has sunk its claws into the West.
Yeah, it is so much more effective and so much more dangerous than had they just rocked up on the border in a tank and said, hey, we're coming in. They have done this in a way that has been so subtle yet so obvious. And that might not make sense. Let me explain. If they were hiding what they were doing, then I would look around the world and I would say, okay, look, still not happy that we've completely missed this, but I get it. I get it. They've come in and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, look, we're here and we're ready to completely screw you all. And we didn't say a word, but that's not the case. They make plans. They have a guiding document that lays out exactly what they want to do, a 100-year plan. And it doesn't involve tanks on a border going in, traditional warfare. It involves a far more effective type of warfare. Get into your schools, get into your colleges, get into social media, get people in that then start to spread their tentacles. And they have done it so effectively, and they have done it whilst having their plan open, available, visible for us all to see and read. And world leaders have failed again and again and again because they're worried about, oh, we might appear racist. Well, let me tell you, if Muslim majority countries are smart enough to ban this, it ain't racist to ban the Muslim Brotherhood. It's an extremist terrorist organization. So this fear that we seem to have in the West of saying, oh no, we can't say this, or we can't stop this, or people might be offended, or we might offend this group of society, that is insanity. And it's almost at the point where it's too late. Look at how much money nations like Qatar have put into education, in America in particular, and it's all over the world. Look at what they do with social media. Look at how they amplify voices that cause division. This is all part of the plan. Don't even start me on the Chinese Communist Party and how they are benefiting from all of this. They are funders too. So the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't act like you might think. You look at October 7 and what Hamas did. Utterly horrific. All in front of our eyes. Murder, slaughter. What the Muslim Brotherhood is doing in a different way in America now is just as dangerous and will be just as detrimental to the Western societies, but they're doing it in a slower, more calculated way, and it is terrifying, and we need to wake up to it. So thank God America finally has under Donald Trump. It's not enough yet, absolutely not, but they are being smart in that if they try and go too hard too early, they will fail because these nations and countries are not stupid.
Yeah, Aaron well said. The Brotherhood essentially are terrorists in suits. And you mentioned, by the way, the communist regime in Beijing. We're going to talk more with Aaron Mullen about that after the break. What about the regime in Beijing? Are we taking our eye off the ball? We're focused on the Middle East while the Chinese Communist Party is making moves. Also, Zohran Mamdani, his effect on New York City and America writ large. More with Aaron Mullen after the break. Don't move. Welcome back to Stack Up. I'm talking to Aaron Mullen, host of the Aaron Mullen Show. Folks, do yourself a favor. Subscribe to Aaron's YouTube channel right now. Follow her on X and across social media, Instagram as well. Aaron, before the break, we were talking about the Brotherhood, this unholy alliance between the radical left, radical Islam. It seems that Zohran Mamdani, the mayor-elect in New York City, is sort of the personification of that. Now, he's building a team. He's being sworn in on January 1st. Aaron, he's now building a team. What are the early indications so far of the Mamdani administration in New York, what it means for that city, and possibly for America writ large as these radical socialist candidates seem to be gaining steam?
Would you like the short answer, Eric? I would say run if you are anywhere in the vicinity. I mean, you thought it was bad enough, the things that came out of his mouth prior to the election, bad enough again that he won the election, but of course we respect democracy. Bad enough again that his head of community safety that he's bringing in is a bloke called Alex who wrote a book about dismantling the police force. I mean, make that make sense. You look at so many of the things that he said earlier and you thought, okay, he's going to straighten up a little bit. He's going to try and become a little bit more mainstream, trying to, do things that matter for New York City. He's met with President Trump and that appeared to go fairly well. I mean, it is on a downhill trajectory very, very quickly for New York City. If this Alex guy is in charge of community safety, and the number one thing that comes up about him when you try and do any research is that he wants to completely defund, dismantle, get rid of police, how does that work? Well, let me answer that for you very quickly. It doesn't on any level. And you're right, it's not just an issue for one city, it's an issue for an entire nation. Once you start emboldening people like this, once you start encouraging this kind of thing, we're already seeing it. We're seeing candidates pop up who refuse to condemn October 7. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with America? Well, sorry, everything. That is at the core of who you are as a person. That is at the core of your character. If you see evil as good and good as evil, how can a society ever function? If you cannot look at something and determine very quickly who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And we have way too many people in the West now who seem to think that evil is somehow good, and that slaughter of innocents is somehow resistance, and that is utterly terrifying. China's desire to take Taiwan is a first step, Eric, as you know, a first step. We've had American generals say they reckon that could happen within a year. It's not just about Taiwan. China has not hid, same as the Muslim Brotherhood and how public they are. If you take the time to read through, we call it the Hansard here in Australia, all the documents from Parliament and from their government mouthpiece newspapers, the Global Times, they are very clear in what they want. Global domination. I know it sounds like a cartoon I'm referring to. It's not. So all this chaos in the West, the fact that the likes of Mamdani are now in power, the capitulation, the woke right, everyone being divided, it benefits them more than anyone else, and they will strike. And that is the danger. And that is the end goal for them, is to overtake America. And I tell you what, given what they value, that is a horrific prospect, not just for America, but sorry, we need you guys to be strong and in charge as well in Australia and in many other places in the world.
No doubt. And Aaron, we're talking about defending Judeo-Christian Western civilization. I see Israel as the first line of defense for Western civilization. You have been a fierce advocate for the world's one and only Jewish state. Some people may say, well, she's in Australia. Why does she care so much about Israel? Why are you such a staunch advocate for Israel, especially in the wake of October 7th, as the anti-Semitic madness is spreading worldwide, including right here in America on segments of the right?
That's insane, isn't it, Eric? And when October 7 occurred, I hosted an opinion show on Sky News Australia, and it was my job to get on once a week and give my take on global events. Not for a second, Eric, did I think that I would go on my show, condemn the horrific atrocities, and of course stand with the innocent victims of those horrific atrocities, Israel and the Jewish people, and that it would be considered controversial, and that there would be blowback on a scale that I had never experienced before. Not for a second. I think that terrified me almost more than what occurred on October 7. I looked at the Opera House in Sydney, where we had people 2 days after, less than 2 days after, celebrate in my country in front of a landmark the greatest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust. Eric, I watched that. And that again didn't terrify me because I thought there's always evil in every country. What terrified me was the silence of my fellow Australians. And that for me was an indicator that we have a far greater problem here. And yes, it comes with great risk. And yes, there is blowback and you pay a price when you speak up for Israel. But my God, what's the alternative? I have a 7-year-old child. If I buckle and I put my head in the sand and I just avoid it entirely, then the kind of world that she grows up in is going to look like the world as it is today, and far worse. I fight every day for the kind of values that will ensure she has freedom, peace, democracy, hope. The kind of values that my dad, who was a major general in the army and went to war in Iraq, ran the war in Iraq on behalf of your nation and its allies, to fight for all the things that we believe in. Who am I if I'm not brave enough to use my platform to fight for those exact same things? You know, the evil at play is not just after Israel. When they drive a car into a Christmas market, they are not checking what religion you are. They're not checking if you're Jewish. They want to destroy all of us who believe in all the wonderful things in the worlds and the countries that we live in. So when I look at Israel, absolutely I stand by Israel. It is not perfect. No country is, no leader is. But their right to exist, their duty to defend their people, and what they stand for, I believe in wholeheartedly. And I will fight for their rights every single day. And it's selfish because I know that my rights are just as under threat.
Amen. Aaron, so well said. Hey, last question. Only about 40 seconds left. We mentioned communist China. Look, we're talking a bunch about the Middle East right now, of course. China's still looming and still lurking. As you said, in your backyard, you're in Australia right now. How concerned are you about the China threat? And are you encouraged that President Trump is taking a hard line against that regime in Beijing?
Absolutely. I think it's the greatest threat we face. I think it's a bigger threat than Iran, bigger threat than Muslim Brotherhood. I think they are just watching now and they will pounce very quickly. We cannot take our eye off the ball. We cannot. Everything else matters. The Chinese Communist Party and their desires matter so much more. It scares me. It scares me greatly, but I think President Trump, starting with the tariffs, taking a tough stance and continuing on, I think is necessary for all of us in the world. I still don't know if it's enough, but we pray.
Aaron, well said. Great stuff, folks. Check her out right now on the Aaron Molan Show, Instagram, X, across social media. Aaron, great job. Keep up the great work. God bless you. We'll see you again soon. Coming up, my final thoughts. Hey, we're talking about these major global security threats, how they affect the United States. I'm going to share a state of play breakdown next. You won't want to miss this. Welcome back to Stats Bank tonight, folks. As we wrap up here, I want to give you a state of play national security breakdown. Look, tonight with Aaron Molan, we discussed the Muslim Brotherhood, Communist China. I also broke down the Venezuela threat at our doorstep. So here's where we're at in terms of global threats facing the United States right now. Let's start with what I call the Gathering Storm Coalition. Charter members, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, united against America and the Western world, and Israel as well. Junior members of that Gathering Storm Coalition, well, you've got Iran's proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen. You've got Russia's close ally, Belarus. You've got Cuba, again, 90 miles from our coast. And, of course, you have Venezuela in our hemisphere. That's the Gathering Storm Coalition. Then you have the Muslim Brotherhood wing. Now, as Aaron and I discussed earlier, look, the Brotherhood has its tentacles throughout the United States and Europe as well, here in the Western world, big power base. But the main players on a national front for the Brotherhood would be Turkey. We're talking nation states that represent the Brotherhood's interest. Turkey, Qatar, and possibly Syria under the new regime there that came to power just a year ago with a former al-Qaeda commander, Ahmed al-Shara, at the helm. He's aligning with Qatar and with Turkey. And again, that is a Islamist agenda. Why is that so troubling? Why is the Muslim Brotherhood such a big problem? Why were Aaron Molden and I sounding the alarm about this organization, this movement tonight? And why did President Trump just designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization? By the way, Governor Greg Abbott, right here in the great state of Texas, where I'm standing right now, he also designated the Brotherhood as a foreign terror organization, as well as one of the Brotherhood's front groups, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Okay, why are they so dangerous? Why are we talking about the Brotherhood so much? Number one, the Muslim Brotherhood is the granddaddy of them all when it comes to modern-day Islamic terror groups. Folks, whether it's Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the al-Qaeda kingpins who planned 9/11, or the former leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, all of these notorious terrorists, before they formed al-Qaeda, ISIS, they belong